Don't read that letter, Mom. It's not for you. That's what my daughter whispered, her voice low, trembling as if the paper in her hand carried enough fire to burn our entire family down. She clutched it close to her chest, eyes darting like a cornered animal, and for a moment, I obeyed. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she was protecting me, or maybe even herself, from something that would pass with time. But you know me, children. You know how curiosity clings to my bones like ivy. That night, when the house was quiet and even the ticking clock seemed to hold its breath, I unfolded the letter she tried so desperately to hide. And the words inside, oh, the words cut me sharper than any knife could. I can still feel that paper between my fingers. It was soft from being handled too much, a little crumpled at the edges, as if she had folded and unfolded it 100 times before. The ink had bled in spots, tiny marks of water, or tears. My daughter's tears. Why would she hide this from me? I asked myself aloud, my voice cracking against the silence of the kitchen. And when I read it, I understood. But understanding didn't make it easier. The words shattered the story of my family I carried for decades. They whispered secrets I was never meant to know. I'll take you back now because you need the whole picture. If I just give you the end, it will sound like a cruel trick of fate. But stories are rivers, not puddles. You have to walk their winding path to understand where they finally spill into the sea. That summer, the year I found the letter, the air itself felt heavy with waiting. Your grandfather had been gone for years by then, and the house felt too big, too hollow. I had filled it with memories, photographs on the walls, quilts folded neatly at the ends of beds no one slept in anymore. And yet my daughter, your mother, your aunt, she visited me more often than usual. She brought flowers, she cooked with me, she laughed too loudly at nothing. You see, when someone is hiding a storm in their chest, sometimes they try to cover the thunder with laughter. I should have noticed. I should have asked. One afternoon, as we sat at the kitchen table shelling peas, she said, Mom, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the past doesn't stay buried forever. I remember looking up, the light falling across her face, and for a second I thought she looked like a stranger wearing my daughter's smile. What do you mean, sweetheart? I asked. She shook her head. I asked. She shook her head. Nothing, just ignore me. But I didn't ignore her. Not really. The words stayed with me like a pebble in my shoe. And when I saw her slip that folded letter into her purse a few days later, when her hand trembled as she did it, I knew the past had already clawed its way to the surface. The day it happened was ordinary, which is what makes it unforgettable. We had just finished dinner, meatloaf and mashed potatoes, her favorite as a little girl. She went to wash the dishes, humming a tune I didn't recognize. That's when her purse fell from the chair and the letter slid out. It was like fate placed it at my feet. I bent down to pick it up, but before I could open it, she spun around, eyes wide. She snatched it from my hand so fast, she knocked over a glass. Water spread across the table, seeping into the placemats, but she didn't even notice. She just pressed the letter against her chest. Don't read that, Mom. Please, it's not for you. Her voice cracked on the word please, and something inside me cracked too. I nodded, pretending to understand. I told her I trusted her. I lied. That night, long after she left, I sat in the dim glow of the kitchen light, staring at the folded paper she had forgotten in her rush. I told myself I wouldn't look, that it was her business, not mine. But then I thought of all the times I had protected her, from bullies at school, from heartbreak in high school, from the loneliness she carried after her father died. Hadn't I earned the right to know what secret was twisting her soul in knots? So I opened it. And children, my hands still tremble when I think about what I saw. The letter was not written by her. It was written to her. The handwriting was jagged, rushed, as though the writer was desperate to get the truth out before courage faded. I'm sorry I waited this long, but you deserve to know who your real father is. I read those words again and again, each time hoping the letters would rearrange themselves into something else. Anything else, but they didn't. They stayed fixed, permanent, like a scar on the page. I pressed the paper to my lips as if by kissing it, I could erase it, swallow it back into silence. You really? But the damage was done. The truth was out. The letter went on, describing moments from long ago, times when I thought my marriage was unshakable, times when I believed love was enough to keep two people faithful. The writer, someone I knew, someone I had welcomed into our home, confessed that he and I had shared something once, something brief, something I buried so deep I thought even God himself had forgotten it. And now here it was, dragged back into the light, not by me, but by a man who claimed to be my daughter's true father. I dropped the letter, clutching the edge of the table to steady myself. I could hear my heart in my ears, loud and furious. I wanted to scream, to tear the paper apart, to deny it all. But denial is a fragile thing. Oh my God, what have I done to her? I whispered. I thought of my daughter, her laughter, her tears, the way she looked at me with trust that had never wavered. She must have read this letter before me. She must have carried this truth in silence, protecting me from the pain of knowing. And that realization, it broke me more than the letter itself. The kitchen seemed to close in on me. The photographs on the wall, our family vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings, suddenly looked like lies, like props in a play I hadn't known I was starring in. I heard my own voice in my head, the promises I made to your grandfather at the altar. I remembered the night I failed him. It had been one night, one weakness, one mistake. And now, decades later, it had come back to rip through the life I built. I pressed my hands to my face and sobbed into the silence. Children, you must understand. Sometimes the past does not stay buried. It waits like a seed under frozen ground, patient, ruthless, until the day the thaw comes and it bursts forth, unstoppable. That night, as dawn crept through the curtains, I made a decision. I could not let my daughter bear this secret alone. I would face it, no matter the cost. But I didn't know then what that decision would set into motion. Because the truth, once uncovered, doesn't just free you. It binds you. It demands answers. It tears open doors you wish had stayed locked forever. And that was just the beginning. The morning after I read the letter, the air in the house felt different, heavy as though the walls themselves knew what I had done. I sat at the kitchen table with the folded paper in front of me, untouched, like a loaded gun no one dared to fire. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the words came back. You deserve to know who your real father is. My daughter was coming over that afternoon. I knew it. She always came on Fridays, and I also knew I couldn't pretend. Not anymore. When the doorbell rang, I almost didn't answer. My chest tightened, my palms damp. But I forced myself up, each step toward the door heavier than the last. She stood there, smiling, holding a bag of groceries. Her eyes sparkled the way they always did when she wanted me to believe everything was fine. Imam, she said, breezing past me. I brought those rolls you like. Thought we'd make soup tonight. I watched her set the bag down on the counter, humming again, too cheerful, and I couldn't bear it. Sit down, I said quietly. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was low, rough, like gravel underfoot. She turned, puzzled. What's wrong? I held up the letter. Her face drained of color. For a moment, neither of us moved. The paper fluttered slightly in my shaking hand. You read it, she whispered. Yes, I said. I did. She closed her eyes as though bracing for a blow. I told you not to, and you expected me to ignore it? To let it sit there while it burned a hole through everything we are? Her eyes opened, glassy with tears. I wasn't protecting me, Mom. I was protecting you. That broke me, protecting me. Always protecting me, when I should have been the one shielding her. Why didn't you come to me right away? I asked, my voice trembling. She shook her head. Because I thought if I said it out loud, it would destroy you. You loved Dad. I know you did, and this would make you relive everything. I wanted to argue, to deny, but the truth hung heavy between us. Do you believe it? I asked finally. Her lips quivered. I don't know what to believe anymore, but I can't stop hearing his voice in my head every time I read it. Whose voice? I asked, though my stomach already knew. She hesitated. Uncle James. The name hit me like a stone to the chest. Your grandfather's brother. The man who stood beside him at our wedding. The man who babysat my daughter when she was small, who fixed leaky pipes, who laughed too loud at Thanksgiving. Uncle James, my breath caught. The room swayed. I gripped the edge of the table to keep myself upright. He wrote this, I whispered. She nodded, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. The sound of the refrigerator humming filled the silence between us, absurdly ordinary against the weight of what we were saying. Why now? After all these years? I asked. He said, he's sick, she murmured, that he didn't want to die with the secret still on his chest. I sank into the chair, the letter trembling in my hands, sick, dying, and yet still powerful enough to tear apart everything we thought we knew. My daughter sat across from me, folding her hands tightly in her lap. Her eyes searched mine, pleading for something, understanding, forgiveness, maybe even denial. Mom, did you? Her voice cracked. Did you ever? Was it true? The question sliced through me. I had carried the answer for decades, buried so deep I sometimes convinced myself it never happened. But looking into her eyes, I couldn't lie. Yes, I whispered. Once, a mistake, a weakness I never forgave myself for. Her shoulders shook. She pressed her hands to her face. Oh my God. It was before you were born, I said quickly. I thought it ended there. I thought it was gone. But your father raised you, loved you. Nothing changes that, doesn't it? She shot back, lowering her hands. Her eyes were sharp, filled with hurt. Doesn't it change everything, Mom? If James was telling the truth, then my whole life is a lie. Her words pierced me deeper than any blade could. No, I said firmly, leaning closer. Your life is not a lie. Your father, your real father, was the man who read you bedtime stories, who carried you on his shoulders, who danced with you in the kitchen. Blood doesn't define love. Do you hear me? It doesn't. But even as I said it, I felt the ground shifting under us. We sat there, the letter lying between us like a wound neither of us could stitch closed. Finally, she spoke. I went to see him, Mom. My head snapped up. You what? I went to see James? She admitted, her voice small. I wanted answers before I showed you the letter. The room tilted again. My pulse pounded in my ears. And what did he say? She hesitated. He swore he wasn't lying. He said he remembered the night clearly. He said he's carried the guilt for decades. My stomach churned. Images I had buried clawed their way back. A night of too much wine, loneliness, words I should never have listened to. Why would you go to him alone? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Because I thought maybe I could stop this before it reached you, she said, tears spilling. But when he looked me in the eyes, I saw something. I don't know if it was truth or desperation, but it scared me, and I knew I couldn't hide it forever. Her words tangled around my heart. I wanted to hold her, to soothe her, but I also wanted to shake her for carrying this alone. We sat in silence, the clock ticking loud, each second pressing down on us. Finally, she asked, almost in a whisper, Hey, Mom, am I his? My chest tightened so hard I thought I might break. I reached across the table and took her hands. You are mine, I said fiercely. You are mine no matter what blood says. Do you understand? Nothing changes that. But I couldn't answer her question. Not truly. Not yet. That night, after she left, I sat awake again. The letter lay on the counter, mocking me. Uncle James was dying, and with his illness came the freedom to confess sins he'd carried in silence. But what about me? What about the secret I thought I'd buried forever? I went to the drawer in my bedroom and pulled out an old photo album. There we were, our family, smiling. Your grandfather's strong arms around me. My daughter, gap-toothed and laughing. And in some pictures, James, standing just off to the side, always near. Looking at those photos, a memory surfaced, the night after it happened. James had looked at me across the table, his eyes lingering too long. And your grandfather had noticed nothing. That was the night I swore I'd lock the truth away forever. But forever had come knocking. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't let my daughter carry this weight alone, and I couldn't let the truth rot away in silence. So I called him. James? His voice on the other end was weaker than I remembered, but unmistakable. Hello? I froze, gripping the phone tight. My throat burned. It's me, I said finally. We need to talk. The silence that followed was thick, loaded with decades of what we never said. Then he coughed, a ragged sound. I wondered when you'd call, he said softly. And children, that was the moment the past and present collided. The moment I realized the storm wasn't just mine or my daughter's. It belonged to all of us. What he told me next would change everything. I drove to his house the next afternoon. The sky was low and gray, heavy with rain that never quite fell, and the windshield wipers squeaked back and forth like a metronome to my heartbeat. The neighborhood hadn't changed much since the last time I'd been there. Same crooked mailbox at the corner, same maple trees whose roots cracked the sidewalks, but everything felt foreign, like stepping onto a stage I'd walked off decades ago. James lived alone now in the little bungalow he'd bought after his second divorce. The curtains were drawn, a faded wreath from last Christmas still clung to the door. I stood there for a long moment, hand hovering above the knocker, telling myself to turn around, but I didn't. I knocked. It took him a while to answer. When he did, I hardly recognized him. He'd always been broad-shouldered, quick to smile. Now he looked thin, hollow, his skin pale and stretched over sharp bones. An oxygen tank hissed softly beside the doorway. "I'll come in," he said, voice rasping. No surprise, no welcome, just a quiet surrender. The living room smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee gone cold. Family photos still lined the mantel, his ex-wives, his kids, and yes, old pictures of us, holiday dinners, fishing trips. I couldn't look at them for long. I sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped in my lap. He lowered himself into an armchair across from me, coughing into a tissue before he spoke. "I thought you'd never come," he said. "You wasn't sure I would." My voice came out steadier than I felt. He studied me with sunken eyes. "You read the letter?" "Yes, and she knows. She's known longer than I have." He closed his eyes, exhaling. "I didn't want to hurt her." "You did," I said. "We both did." For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sounds were the ticking of a wall clock and the faint hiss of his oxygen. Then he said, "You dying, you know, I heard. Didn't send that letter to ruin your life. I sent it because I don't want to take this to my grave. And it is in my grave." His hands trembled on the armrests. "She deserves the truth. She deserves peace," I said sharply. "And you've given her anything but." His eyes flicked to mine, searching. "But do you even know for sure? Do you even know for sure?" I flinched. No," I admitted, "and that's what's killing her." He leaned back, closing his eyes. "Use air. He loved you," he whispered. Back then, I thought maybe you loved me too." I stared at the worn carpet. "It wasn't love, James. It was loneliness. One night, one mistake, and I've spent my whole life paying for it." The silence between us thickened, heavy with everything we'd left unsaid for decades. Finally, I asked, "Why didn't you say something sooner, when she was little? When her father was alive?" He opened his eyes, glassy now. "Because he loved her. And because you loved her. And because you asked me not to." "Well, I asked you?" He nodded slowly. "The morning after. You looked me in the eye and said this never happened. And I agreed, for her sake. For his, for yours." I swallowed hard, memory flickering, my own voice in that kitchen so long ago, firm and desperate. "This never happened." "Well, I thought we'd buried it," I murmured. So did I," he said. But dying makes a man think about what he leaves behind." We sat there, two ghosts among old photographs. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Finally, I said, "If there's any chance she's yours, we need to know. Not guesses, not stories. The truth." He coughed, a deep rattling sound, then nodded. "There's a test," he said hoarsely. But I don't know if she'd agree." "She might," I said, "if it means ending this nightmare." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a flicker of a moment, I saw the man he'd been, laughing at barbecues, teasing his brother, holding my baby girl in his arms. His eyes softened. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "So am I said, soon after." The sky had finally opened, rain falling in thin silver threads across the windshield. I sat in the driveway for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, letting the storm wash the heat from my face. When I got home, the house felt even emptier than before. My daughter was waiting at the kitchen table. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Well?" she asked. I hung up my coat and sat across from her. I saw him. She searched my face. "And?" "He's very sick." My hands shook slightly as I reached for hers. "He's sorry. He's sorry. And he says he wants the truth as much as we do." She looked down. "What does that even mean?" "It means there's a way to know. A test." Her breath caught. "His DNA test." "Yes." She stared at the tabletop. "I don't know if I can do that." I squeezed her hands. "You don't have to decide tonight, but you deserve an answer. You've carried this long enough." She stood and began pacing. "If I do it and he's not my father, then I've ripped open all this pain for nothing. And if he is—" She stopped, clutching her arms. "If he is, then my whole life changes." I rose and took her by the shoulders. Listen to me. Your life doesn't change. Who raised you, who loved you, that's your father. Nothing can rewrite that." Her eyes filled again. "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" Because I thought it was buried. Because I was ashamed. Because I wanted to protect you." My voice cracked. "And I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." She leaned into me then, and for a moment we were just mother and daughter again, clinging to each other while the storm rattled the windows. Over the next few days, she hardly spoke. She went to work, came home, and retreated to her room like a teenager again. I let her. Some decisions can't be rushed. One evening, she came into the kitchen while I was washing dishes. "I'll do it," she said quietly. I turned. "Are you sure?" She nodded. Ooh, need to know. Whatever the answer is, I dried my hands on a towel and hugged her. We'll do it together. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at the table with a cup of tea, staring at the dark window. My own reflection stared back. Older now, hair silvered, eyes lined. A woman who had thought she could outrun one mistake for a lifetime. I whispered into the glass, "Let this bring her peace. Please." Somewhere in the house, the floor creaked, the sound of her moving, or maybe just the old wood settling. The rain had stopped, leaving the night still and heavy. In the quiet, I felt the weight of all those years pressing down and the faintest stirrings of something else. A chance, however fragile, at forgiveness. Children, you must understand. Secrets don't just vanish when you tell them. They echo. They ripple through the people you love, through the years you thought were safe. But sometimes facing them is the only way to stop them from devouring you whole. The test results would come later. But in that moment, sitting in my kitchen with the smell of rain still clinging to the air, I realized something. No matter what the paper said, no matter what blood revealed, my daughter was still my daughter, and I would stand with her in whatever storm came next. The waiting was the hardest part, kissed part. We sent in the tests, swabs sealed in neat envelopes, as if the truth could be tucked into paper and shipped away like a package. Days stretched into weeks, each one heavy with silence. My daughter went about her life in a daze, and I walked on eggshells, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to hope too much. Every time the phone rang, my heart leapt. Every letter in the mailbox felt like it could be the one. And yet, when the envelope finally arrived, it felt almost too small to carry something so monumental. It came on a Thursday morning, slipped between grocery flyers and utility bills. Just an ordinary envelope with her name printed neatly across the front. I held it in my hands for a long time before calling her. She came over that afternoon, her face pale, her movements restless. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope as though it might explode. Do you want me to open it?" I asked gently. She shook her head. No, I'll do it." Her hands trembled as she tore it open. The paper inside crackled. I watched her eyes scan the words, her lips moving silently. Then she froze. What does it say?" I whispered. She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "It says, 'He's not my father.'" The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. I felt my knees give way, and I sat down across from her. "Not James," she repeated, her voice stronger now. Dad was my father all along." Tears spilled down my face before I could stop them. Relief crashed over me like a wave, so fierce it left me gasping. Thank God," I whispered. "Thank God," I whispered. But my daughter didn't smile. Her eyes filled, her mouth trembling. "Then why, Mom? Why did you do it at all? If I was Dad's all along, why did you ever?" Her words trailed off, but I knew what she meant. I reached across the table, taking her hands in mine. "I was weak. Because one night I let loneliness whisper louder than love, and I've carried that shame every day since. But it was never about you, sweetheart. Never." She stared at me, and I could see the storm inside her. Relief, anger, sorrow, all tangled together. We sat there for a long time, holding hands, crying quietly. Finally, she said, "I hated you, Mom." For a while. "After I read that letter, I hated you." The words cut deep, but I nodded. "I know." I hated me too. But I understand in a way. Life is complicated. People are complicated. I just wish you'd trusted me enough to tell me sooner. "I should have," I admitted. "I thought I was protecting you. But secrets don't protect. They poison." Her eyes softened. "So we're done with secrets then?" "Yes," I said firmly. "No more secrets." That evening, as the sun set, she stayed for dinner. We cooked together, chopping vegetables, stirring soup, just like old times. For the first time in weeks, she laughed. Not the brittle, forced laughter I'd heard before, but real laughter, warm and alive. And in that laughter, I heard forgiveness. Not all at once, not complete, but beginning. 2 days later, we visited James. He was weaker now, his voice barely more than a whisper. He looked at my daughter with eyes full of fear and hope. "I'm sorry," he said to her. "I thought," his chest rattled with each breath. "I thought you were mine." She shook her head. "You're not." The test proved it. His eyes closed, tears slipping down his cheeks. Then I ruined everything for nothing." No," she said softly. "You told me the truth, even if it wasn't what I wanted to hear. That takes something, and I can't hate you for it." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded faintly. When we left, I knew it would be the last time we saw him. A week later, we got word that he had passed. Children, when I tell you this story, it's not to frighten you or to weigh you down with the mistakes of the past. It's to show you what truth costs and what lies cost more. I spent decades thinking I could bury one night of weakness. But the past has a way of clawing back, and secrets don't stay silent forever. Your mother, your aunt, she carried a pain she never should have carried. She questioned her very identity because of me. And yet, when the truth came, she chose forgiveness. That is the greatest gift I've ever been given. I think often of your grandfather. If he were alive, I don't know if he'd forgive me. I don't know if he'd still hold my hand, still look at me with love in his eyes. Maybe he would. Maybe he wouldn't. That's a weight I'll carry until the end. But I do know this. Love is not made of perfection. It's made of persistence. It's made of showing up even when you failed. It's made of saying, I was wrong, but I am still here. That's what I want you to remember. The night after James died, I sat alone in the quiet house, a candle flickering on the table. I thought about the letter, about the pain it caused, about the healing that came after. And I realized something. Sometimes the truth doesn't free you immediately. Sometimes it burns first. But if you can survive the fire, it leaves room for new growth. I folded the letter one last time and slipped it into the drawer where I keep family photographs, and not to hide it again, but to preserve it as a reminder. A scar, not a wound. So, my loves, when you stumble, and you will because everyone does, don't run from it. Don't run from it. Don't bury it. Face it. Speak it. Because silence will cost you more than the truth ever will. Your mother and I, we faced it together. We cried, we fought, we forgave. And now, when I hear her laugh, I know we survived the fire. That's the legacy I leave you. Not perfection, but resilience. Not a spotless story, but a story that bends and breaks and still carries on. Because in the end, family is not about blood, not about secrets, not about mistakes. It's about choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And if you carry that with you, then maybe my mistakes won't have been in vain.